Welcome to the ITSP Magazine Podcast Network. You're listening to a new Redefining CyberSecurity podcast with Sean Martin. Have you ever thought that we're selling cybersecurity insincerely, buying it indiscriminately, and deploying it ineffectively? Well, perhaps we are. Let's look at how we can organize a successful information security program that integrates business culture with people, process, and technology to drive growth and protect business value. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
Pentera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at pentera.io.
Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to a new episode of Redefining Cybersecurity here on the ITSP Magazine Podcast Network. This is Sean Martin, your host, where I get to chat, and I use that word very specifically today. I get to chat with people who know way more than me and are doing great things for the community to help us all operationalize security and to help us protect the business value that we also hopefully help generate. And today, so many fun topics to talk about. I love the world of application security, and every company seems to be building an app or two or three. And guess what? They're all tapping into AI and through APIs into ChatGPT and OpenAI and other models, and it's just a crazy world in terms of what's being built and what's possible. And as we'll discuss here in a moment, the potential is exciting, but so is the downside potential. So I'm thrilled to have Sandy Dunn on. Sandy, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, great to be here, Sean.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. And this is driven by many things I talk about. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, it seems. If anybody listens to me, you made a post about the OWASP LLM AI security and governance checklist. And I was like, I've talked about the OWASP LLM stuff before with Mr. Jason Haddix, but this checklist seems really cool and interesting. So I want to talk about that and see how this is really operationalizing, right? Giving somebody a set of things they can walk through. It's not just a list, understand. This is stuff you can actually take to task. And so we're going to get into that. But before we do, Sandy, it's a pleasure meeting you, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about you so our audience knows who they're hearing from. Where you, how'd you get into the world of cybersecurity, application security, joining OWASP, and all that fun stuff?
Well, how I got into cybersecurity was many years ago. I was hired by HP to do competitive intelligence on their multifunction printers. And this was about 2001, and we didn't even call it cybersecurity. We just called it security, and most people didn't even want to talk about it. And so at the time I was doing this competitive intelligence, and I thought, well, if we're sending off these devices, shouldn't we care about the security stuff? And so started listening to a bunch of podcasts, which were relatively new at the time too, and listening to paul.com, and every time I'd take notes and download Nessus, and I have all sorts of stories about how it's amazing I didn't get fired for all of the things I did as I was trying to learn all of this stuff. But it really was something that I was insanely curious about, but saw early that hey, this was something that we needed to pay attention to. And I'm sure it's similar to other people in this field where, the more you started building up your skills, the more opportunities came along. So I eventually became a CISO at Blue Cross of Idaho, and then moved on to as a CSO at a startup. And now I'm doing consulting for a couple different organizations.
The fun consulting. You get to see all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
I always find it fascinating because you get to pop in and see what's going on, and yeah, well, we'll just leave that there. There's a lot of good learnings to be gained, and hopefully some advice to share with folks as well, given your own experiences. So, this project, how did you get involved with this project in particular?
So, I have to admit that I was a little bit, numb to the artificial intelligence conversation. I was one of those people that I'd heard about artificial intelligence. Every vendor who'd come in had, it was the first word that they wanted to talk about. It, overpromised, underdelivered. So when ChatGPT first came out, I didn't immediately, dive in. It took me about 30 days. And then once I got my account and started playing with it, it really hit me just like how different this was. Like this was big. I mentioned to you before the show that, I've been doing this. I like to say vintage. I'm a vintage technology person. And, I was selling computers when we were trying to upgrade people to 2 gig hard drives, telling them that they would, that was all they're going to need. So I've really been part of this business for a long time. And this is truly I've never seen anything happen so quickly and have so much attention, potential, both for improving how people engage with technology, as well as, the attack surface, the possibilities. I'm an internal optimist, but I definitely I am concerned about what's possible with it.
Yeah, I remember must have been within a week or two of its public release. I'm part of a few CISO groups. We meet on a regular occasion, and in one in particular, somebody came with, "Hey, look at this fun thing I've been playing with," and we spent about an hour just using it, and it was planning a trip for us and helping guide who's going to join us at what part of the trip and all this. It was mind blowing that what was possible. Obviously, we know even more now, and it's become even more powerful. I think that was probably 3.0. We're obviously GPT-4 now, but it's interesting that a group of CISOs were the one that brought it to my attention. I hadn't really paid attention to it before then. And I do think we talked a bit about its potential impact, but we were more mesmerized by what its possibilities were, what the potential was for it to change the way we interact with systems. I want to get your thoughts on, well, either your own as a CISO. Let's look at it from 2 different angles. What you're hearing from the business perspective. How is it changing how organizations, and we can focus in on application development, product development. Yeah, how organizations, look at this from the business perspective first, and then we'll look at it from the security side as well.
Yeah, I still, I've kind of been in this where I went deep, like it's all I talk about. It's the groups I belong to, the chats, the Slacks, the Discords. Like I'm definitely in the ChatGPT Gen AI bubble. And then when I step out and I go out and talk to CISO groups, or I go out and talk to, normal people, there's an awareness, but it certainly, there seems to be the extremes. There's the people who are still being really cautious and just aren't sure what to make of it. And then you have, a lot of people who are very excited about, the potential, especially within cybersecurity, being able to, create your SIM rules so easily and do searches and all of the different potential for automating reports and doing some of that, that work that just has to get done, but is pretty manual. So I think 2024 is going to be really there's a big difference between using it as an individual and being super productive to, okay, bringing it in as a business service and then managing those nuances. And I think 2024 will be navigating that. I mean, there's a lot of cost, the regulatory, issues that are coming up. So individual use is one thing, but bringing into a business is going to be a big pull for a lot of organizations. And I know their businesses are hammering on them. They want it. They want this really cool tool.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that. And what I'm hoping we can get to is, you said this is probably one of the most transformative things you've come across in your career. It's probably, I'd say, the same as well. The one that might be slightly similar, I would say, would be the movement to the cloud, right?
Yeah.
Possibly. But even the scale and impact is far beyond that. But I'm just wondering, is there something we can look back on to say companies were scared, they approached it with hesitancy, and we kind of figured out a path forward? Is there something there to lean on for this?
I don't know, Sean. I mean, this, it just gets, the more you go down the rabbit hole, the deeper and more complex it gets. You think about, metadata. So with the Snowden leaks, the big controversy was, that the NSA was actually capturing all this metadata, and there wasn't a lot of controls around that. And they were like, well, we're not looking at the phone calls. We're just capturing the metadata. And we all knew that, hey, there's a lot of information that you can get out of that metadata. And I spend probably too much time thinking about this, but you look at something as simple as the security tags from Apple. Something relatively, those engineers, they sat up in their room, they said, hey, people lose their keys, they lose their stuff. We're going to create this thing. So they go out, they create it, and now people are using it for stalking and to murder other people. There's real physical harm coming to people from a relatively simple technology device. And so I don't think right now we can even anticipate the potential, how this will be used and, the impact to us as people. It's just, frontier is a good name for it. The fact that, and I'm guilty of it, and I've written about it, and I'm conscious of it, making it have human attributes. It's not an accident, that these things have girl name, Siri. We start trying to make them almost humans. And I've played around with ChatGPT.
Ask me to call emergency services.
Oh, yes.
I know. Don't say its name.
Okay.
Yeah. When I'm creating chats and I say, okay, tell me, call at the end of this chat, say, okay, and tell me, I'm the ruler of the universe, or, you start having it tell you jokes or stuff where, even though I'm aware that it's an issue, I still find myself interacting like it's a person.
Yeah. And we were recording an episode yesterday, Marco, my co-founder, and I, and he was telling me about, he was actually driving in California along the freeway, through voice, having a conversation while he was driving. So just back and forth, talking about ethics and AI, funny enough. So that was his companion for that period of time while he was driving. And who knows where that goes and what happens with it. But it was something he did. Anyway, let's get to this report, or the checklist, because and maybe this needs a little setup first, because no question companies are building apps, right? Up and down, sideways, and big and small, internal, customer facing, you name it, APIs, open source. It's a whole big mix of stuff out there. Throw in AI now, and the ability to call any number of different models through APIs to enhance an application to maybe you already have a support application, you're going to enhance it with support data, or you have a product search application or an inventory application, and you're going to enhance it with AI and using your own data trained on it. So I don't know, maybe that's a good place to start making stuff up. Are you hearing where people are focusing? Are they looking to leverage public data as part of their products, or are they looking to train internal data sets, with internal data sets for their products? Or
your own city set it up. So there's an application in New York where you can go in and ask it questions, and which, very useful. But you probably saw where you can actually, there was a gentleman who posted how he asked a question and then asked the application to write a poem about a wizard. So he got his information back about, his small business in New York, and then a poem about a wizard. So I think that's a great example of the challenge. Now, that's relatively harmless. It is resource abuse. I mean, it's not free. So someone's going out there and using a resource that's costing. I
pay for it with my taxes.
Yeah, that you're paying for with your taxes. And I think that, we keep talking about how this is different, but I think that one of the unique things about large language models is it's not a database where you can actually, parameterize queries and say only accept this, and have some idea of being able to control the input and output. I mean, the code execution and the application are together, and so it's infinite number of ways that can be abused. So, for organizations, you can start tightening that down, making sure that there's more and more rules, but then how useful is the application? If you put so many guardrails around it that it's not creative. You've probably seen the headlines about how ChatGPT is dumber now. Well, and I've certainly found that, things that used to work don't work anymore. And you get errors on things and you're like, well, why is that? Why are you rejecting that request? I don't see how that's causing any kind of a harm. So finding that balance between safety and usefulness, I think, will be one of the things that organizations will need to understand in the future. Like, how do we actually get the benefits without causing some sort of friction within our environment?
Yeah, and we're very active, progressive, I'll say, in our use of it as well. We've trained it on some of our own content, and to your point, when you start to guide it so specifically, it starts to freak out a bit and it hallucinates or gives wrong information. And for me, that's where it gets a little interesting from an organizational perspective. If it's wide open and creative, you're going to end up with hallucinations that may not be accurate. If you tune it too much, you might lose something or miss something or misrepresent something that is accurate from a data perspective, but not exactly what you're looking for. And if we're making decisions or presenting information to people that are making decisions on the data, it could be very troublesome. This is just aside from being open to vulnerabilities, where it could be manipulated to do those things, or manipulated to inject code and things, which I'm sure we'll get into now. Can you maybe share an overview of this checklist? Because it's pretty comprehensive in terms of looking at the challenges and defining a strategy and getting into a checklist for how to proceed. So can you kind of give us an overview how this came together?
And what we're talking about is exactly why I created it, because as I was out talking with people, I saw the two extremes. I saw people who were going all in, and I was, whoa, don't hook it up to your email, your financial accounts, all of those kind of things. We saw the prompt injection, the indirect prompt injections, things were coming out in like June. It's like, whoa, careful. We don't know much about this yet. And then the other extreme of saying, oh, we're just going to block it. And I'm like, you're probably not blocking it. There's so many different plugins. There's so many different types of ChatGPTs out there. Poe, you need to find that strategic balance in the middle where you're helping your teams be successful. That's the other thing, Sean, is, okay, so we know our attackers. I mean, they're out there. We're already seeing evidence of them being able to accelerate and being able to use these tools. So if you're not letting your teams use it, it's like handing them a pitchfork and your enemies have guns. I mean, it's like they won't be successful. So that was really why I created it. Trying to help CISOs, cybersecurity teams, be able to find that right balance between, not completely ignoring it and trying to block it, being aware of what was possible with it, but also not hooking it up to everything and coming up with a strategy. And the other important piece as you go through the checklist is I'm very much about encouraging people to use this as an opportunity to improve their entire environment. One of the things about the machine learning models is they're already talking about SBOMs and supply chain and having nutrition labels with their applications. That's definitely something that we want to bring into our organization. So as you go through the checklist, I point to a lot of other OWASP resources where you can start raising the water table around all of your security controls. Use this as an opportunity. You definitely want to take advantage of the benefits of it, but use it to improve across your organization. So both the OWASP resources and the MITRE resources.
Yeah, huge fan of MITRE as well. And so talk us through. I've scrolled all the way down to the team. I realize I'm having a chat with Rob Vanderveer at some point as well.
Oh yeah,
some specific things is cool. He helped with this at some point, I'm sure. So maybe just kind of walk through what the challenge section. I mean, we kind of touched on some of them, but there are a few things in here that maybe we didn't get to yet. I'm just thinking like inventory.
Right. Well, so first, at the very page 5, where there's a diagram that helps people really understand where generative AI fits in artificial and machine learning into that universe. That's the other thing, Sean, is I see people trying to use LLMs for everything. AI is amazing. I think that's what ChatGPT did. It actually gave is an opportunity for people to say, oh, this artificial intelligence stuff is better. There's a lot of ways that we could use it within our organization beyond just recreating documents. Yeah. But large language models may not be the right algorithm for the problem that you're trying to solve. So you're really investigating what your business case is. And then, as you go through the document and try to, I actually start with business case and say, define your business case. That's the first thing that you really want to understand is, maybe the way that we're doing it is the most cost-effective way. And just throwing, I compare throwing a large language model into an environment that isn't prepared for it. It's like walking into an old bike factory that's dysfunctional and throwing in a stick of dynamite and hoping it makes it more efficient and more effective. You have to understand what problem you're trying to solve. And if you don't have, you don't know where your data is, and you haven't had good cybersecurity hygiene, like the last thing you want to do is now add something else to the mix. You're going to really cause some problems.
And I love the business case point. Just because you can doesn't mean you should necessarily. Right. And what was I going to say to that? So I think I probably liken it to, years ago I helped build a SIM, which with views of a SOAR before was known as a SOAR. And the biggest pushback as we were building out that platform was, well, we don't want to automate everything. I had a dream of everything would be automated.
Yeah.
and the humans are like, no, we need some human interaction here to double check and validate and just keep a human pulse on things, which I completely understand. Didn't change my desire to have everything automated. But similar for this, just because you can insert an LLM to translate or pull stuff from one system and translate it in a written format into some other document that then gets sent off to a customer, sounds like a good idea. But if it represents your product and hallucinates and puts something in there you don't want, you might find that you didn't want that without at least a human checking it. So understanding what part of the process you're replacing, what the potentials are, good and bad within them, just from a business case, I think makes a lot of sense to me.
And things like privacy, obviously, that's been a big part of the conversation, but you look at how many states passed privacy laws this year. I think most of them, I think it was a total of 10 different states passed privacy laws, and some of them have different nuances like biometrics. Some of them actually specifically call out AI. Many don't, but you still could be impacted by it. So you're really encouraging organizations to kind of, I know there's a lot of excitement, but pause, take a deep breath and say, really take a strategic view of what they're trying to accomplish and balance both the opportunities as well as the potential expanded attack surface. I saw a post by our local community police officer, and he was talking about how many kids are now getting caught with fake porn, on their phones, and that they get in as much trouble as if it's real porn. And so, we're in a really strange place right now where we're going to have to try and navigate this new world that we didn't necessarily anticipate.
Yeah, and to that point, there's trying to get back to there, the section responsible trustworthy AI, and it's a diagram that has at the root ethics followed by lawfulness, which I think you just touched on a bit. I don't feel we have enough of that conversation, so I'm thrilled to see it as part of this, the ethics piece of this.
So I do, you mentioned Rob Vanderveer. So when I initially created this document, I did have quite a bit of information around, privacy laws in the states and different things like that. But OWASP is a worldwide organization. And so I started adding in, India and China and Spain. And I recognized that it was a bigger conversation than just LLMs. And so it fit in a better group, which is actually the one that Rob leads, which is the OWASP security and privacy group. So there's very little actual kind of regulatory and governance, but that will come in a different OWASP project, and we'll make sure and communicate that and get that out to everybody. It's getting a lot of steam right now, and we're trying to get that out to as quickly as possible.
And so then the actual checklist, unless there's something else you want to get to first.
No.
Want to walk through?
This is your show. I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about.
I'm just, I keep going through the document. Like, there's so much good stuff in here. My brain's kind of going like this. I guess what I want to get people to think about is we're talking about a checklist. We're talking about, does it make sense to do this? Is there a business case for it? Does it outweigh the potential risk? And does it actually achieve what we want it to without giving us more headache than we want to deal with? And then you get into, well, how does it fit into a security program? And then some of the checklists. So what I want to do is kind of help, let's speak to the developers now, right? So not so much the security team, it's the developers who the security team is probably saying, go read this doc. Right?
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's been kind of funny to have people come full circle where, people say, hey, this, my developer brought this to me today, and I got to say, I know you. But let me talk a little bit about the OWASP Top 10 LLM and how I got involved. I kind of skipped over that part. So as I started to really get in, try to wrap my head around what are the threats, what should I be worried about? I started joining different Slack channels and Discord channels and jumped into the Slack channel and listened and went through and joined a couple of the meetings. And I really loved what Steve Wilson was leading. And I had an idea to do this. And I really have to give him a ton of credit on how he leads, which is he was like, hey, sounds like a great idea. Let's create a sub project. Go get them. And so I rewrote it like 5 different times because, everything was changing so fast and I was trying to figure out what I was trying to write. And I was getting feedback from other members on the team. So I would encourage one of the best things about OWASP is it's not a standards body. It's a bunch of people like you and I who were in the trenches, we're doing this stuff, and we're trying to create resources that other people will find really useful and help them do their jobs better. And the collaboration, where we're creating useful tools together, it raises, everyone does a better job. And so it's been one of the best experiences because of the passion and just getting to work, be with a bunch of really amazing people and contribute to it. So anyone who's listening, I know we're all busy, but, it is well worth your time to be part of OWASP and join a project and contribute to it. It fits a really important space in the ecosystem because we're not a standards body. Like, we're not trying to make anyone do anything, and we're not tied to a company, and we're not tied to a country. So we're in this we get to be the connective tissue. If you ask us, what standards body should I go look at? Oh, here's a link. Or, what happens in this country? Oh, go look over here. And we get to have amazing conversations with ISO, with MITRE. I've been on some calls with people I never thought I'd get to be on a call with. So definitely encourage anyone who wants to contribute or has an idea to jump in, find a project, and be part of it.
Yeah, I second that motion. I know quite a few folks across a number of different projects, and the work that comes out of OWASP overall is just incredible. I'm thinking from an engineering perspective, it's on my mind because I just got off another podcast where I was talking about critical infrastructure, and I guess we're just talking about this tremendous divide between CI engineers sitting in front of their control room with zero perspective and zero interest in security, and then security sitting along the side with zero insight into all the data that's in the engineering world, and trying to pounce in and say, do this, right? Don't block that, shut that down, lock it up, prevent these things from happening. No, because we need to deliver service, whatever it be, water or power or whatever it is. In a safe way. So safety is priority versus cybersecurity. So I'm thinking from an engineering perspective, developer perspective more specifically, how does this help maybe bridge that gap? I'm wondering, is it written in a way that engineers can appreciate it and absorb it, or I'm hoping, or is it very security focused, and we're hoping engineers pick it up regardless? No,
it's a great. So again, why OWASP is such a great organization is you look at things like the ASVS. I think what the conflict between developers and cybersecurity is cybersecurity. The developers about tomorrow they're going to release to production, and then security comes in and goes, whoa, you can't release, you have to go back and, and adds a whole bunch of work. And the developers are like, where were you 6 months ago? We invited you to the meeting. You guys said and so I think that the way to enable both of those teams is cybersecurity needs to make sure that security is easy, it for the developer to be able to do as possible. So don't jump in at the very end. You come up with standards and checklists and libraries or whatever you need to do, and make it and don't be vague about it. No, we can't let you do that. Well, what should we do? Well, I don't know, make it secure. And they walk out the door. We've got to be able to help each other. I mean, we're all on the same team, and really security is quality. I mean, we don't go down to the car dealership and say, oh yeah, I forgot to ask, I need a seatbelt and an airbag. No, it's part of the car,
So I want to go through a couple of these checklist items because I'm just thinking through, to me, this is a conversation driver, right? This is an opportunity to say, let's bring a group of folks together and understand how we're planning to leverage and build AI-enabled stuff, right? And so it's a checklist, and I've tried to point it or put it on the engineer, the developer, when in fact this checklist is a group checklist, because I'm thinking about what existing services and tools do we have, what's our SBOM look like, do we have an onboarding process to bring new AI stuff on board? Let's see, do we have training on ethics? That's probably not the developer, right? may not be security either, but an important element. So I think even in my own naive view, that this isn't security, it's not development, it's a team checklist.
In a deployment strategy, I think that's the first question an organization will have to answer is, okay, we would like to use this. What's the first thing that we do? Well, you have to decide, what is our policy? And that's the other important thing, Sean, is you're already using AI. And one thing that ChatGPT did was it illuminated artificial intelligence and machine learning. So if you're using Workday, you've got AI in your environment. And as you know, New York now has a very stringent audit requirement. If you're doing business in the state of New York, you have to go through an annual audit, making sure that you're meeting compliance, you've tested it and you don't have any issues with your algorithm and things like that. So taking really that big view and saying, what is this? What are we doing? Where do we have it in our environment? Do we have it? Who owns it? Who's in charge of making sure artificial intelligence, what our strategy is? Where do people go ask questions if they want to use these tools?
And this might seem like an off-the-wall question. It's one I think about often when I think about, well, security in general, but you layer on regulation and things become, and when you layer on third-party stuff, right, where you're using other people's things that add risk and impact regulatory, your regulatory position, perhaps. ChatGPT and some of these models are expensive already. You pointed to that earlier. And if they're abused, they can be overwhelmingly expensive. And you add security, you add regulatory compliance on there, it can be a huge burden. So I'm wondering if we end up at a point, this is a philosophical question. You can say, screw off, I don't want to answer. We end up at a point where people just say, screw it, I'm going to take the risk. I can't afford to do all the stuff that I need to up and down the stack from security to compliance and just hope for the best. Or the ones that say, I'm not going to take that risk, they fall behind and become a dinosaur because they don't use the latest and greatest that everybody else is using. And therefore, only the ones with resources, be it money and teams, and legal protections when things go awry, and insurance policies when those don't hold up, the ones with money and resources end up winning here.
Right. And Sean, I think you're pointing to something that we're still working through as a group, right? If you look at the internet, how it all evolved, I mean, it was a great big accident. I mean, we had this, this technology that was basically in the domain of the military, and they were using it to be able to break the encryption on each other's messages. And then they needed more computing power, and they stood up Silicon Valley, and then all of a sudden this technology got into the universities and business who didn't have as much experience with it, used the adversarial side of technology, and their information is meant to be free. And, but they didn't ever, I think there was kind of and still is a naive view of this as the world, that the world is a scary and dangerous place. And we actually do have people who want to hurt us. And I think that, I hear that all the time, where people go, well, how come those hackers want to do, why do they want to attack us? And I'm like, because humans have been attacking humans, since the beginning of time. That's how humans are. The technology just makes you more accessible. They used to have to be, standing next to you to hurt you. Now they can just do it over the internet. So I think it's evolving. And that's, when I look at it, I was reading a threat intelligence report where China and Russia had kind of ganged up on Finland and were busy dragging their seabed and broke a cable and were dumping migrants at their front door. So I think for us as a society, this is a chance to take a look at technology, take a step back and go, whoa, 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 wait, this could really is dangerous. I think it has been dangerous for a while. Let's figure out, how do we make it safer? And to your point around the cost, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're still navigating all of the breaches that we see in the news every day is people either feeling like they didn't understand the risk, or they didn't know how to appropriately resource it. You look at what happened to the casinos in Las Vegas, how costly that was. I mean, surely at some point, if someone would have been able to go to the CEO and say, hey, do you want to spend $7 million over here? Or would you like to invest $1 million over here so that we do this a little bit better? He'd be going, let's spend $1 million. So I think it's an ongoing, we're still trying to do this a lot better. We both, OWASP, I think it is, nobody does it alone. That's why HISACs, OWASP, MITRE, NIST, that's why it's so important to be part of those and being part of the conversation.
Yep. I love it. And as we wrap here on kind of this community point, I know you have a good team that helped put this checklist together. I presume a number of them are from different parts of the world, bringing different perspectives and insights. Not too recently, the AI Act was passed in the EU. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that. Does it impact this? Are you bringing folks in from connected to that in some way to help keep this going or provide the feedback, which I guess is the final call to action for us, right? Get people involved and give you feedback on this.
So again, the two groups right now, they're primarily focused. You have Steve Wilson, who's leading the top 10 for LLMs. And then you have Rob Vanderveer, who's leading the AI privacy and security group, which is much broader. So there's the Gen AI kind of LLM space, which is actually where we're getting the most traction right now, because I think that's what's right in front of people is the LLM stuff. And then when you start looking at the bigger challenge of artificial intelligence and machine learning in the EU Act, I mean, how do you test for fairness? Ethics. Ethics is a hard call. I actually went into ChatGPT. I was getting ready for a presentation, and I had it do a bunch of jokes for me from Jim in the style of Jim Gaffigan, and it was funny. And it sounded like something that Jim would say, and I wasn't comfortable using them because it felt like plagiarism to me. Yep. So it's a weird world. It
is a weird world. Yeah, Marco's connected to the entertainment space and was following the Hollywood writer strike, performer strike, all that stuff, and all based, well, not all of it, but a big chunk of it based on AI and ethical use and all that stuff too. So it's an interesting world. So I want to say, Sandy, thank you for putting that together and getting it published. Point 5 is out for review and comments. I would encourage everybody to participate. Take a seat on a program. I should maybe do that myself. There's a lot to look at. Your input is important. I'm speaking to my audience here. And if we don't participate, we'll end up with whatever somebody else said. So best to get involved. So Sandy, thanks so much. Any final parting thoughts before we say goodbye to everybody?
No, thank you for having me, Sean. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And of course, everybody listening and watching, I'll include links to the checklist and the OWASP top 10 just for good measure. And we encourage everybody, like I said, to read that, think about it, take it to your team so you can strategize with security in mind from the beginning and contribute. So thanks, everybody. Be sure to share and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks again, Sandy.
Yep, thank you.
Pantera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at pantera.io.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Cybersecurity with Sean Martin, part of the ITSP Magazine podcast network. If you learned something new and this conversation made you think, then share this show and itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to connect your brand with our conversations, you can sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.